But I'm constantly hearing this argument that white people have this advanced place in society because of the wealth that was obtained in slavery, and that there's this institutionalized racism. And I'd really like to have your thoughts so I can have a really strong argument.
As I say, how come all of today's Africans aren't rich from selling slaves? I mean, they owned and sold slaves, so they ought to really be rich, right? Well, why aren't they? I think there's obviously a qualitative difference in the cultures that accounts for all these disparities. Look, my argument against all these people is, talk about things like institutional racism is, you're the racist. You're the white supremacist. Because according to you, everything that happens in this world is caused by whites. Whites alone have free will and causal power. Other races don't. Other races can't control their fate. Only the super white man can control anyone's fate, his own and others. And this goes beyond Hitler. Hitler never claimed this much for Germans or Aryans. But here the whites are supposed to, if we're going to take responsibility and guilt for everything, why don't we take the credit too? I mean, it's ridiculous. We're only human. And so are they. We all are. We're all in this together. And these ideologies are always trying to load all the guilt on one side. That's the nature of ideology. That's why I'm against it. That's why I think, in fact, it's an inherently fraudulent mental structure. When, it's the same way with all this business of sexism. Everything that happens is the men's fault. Men control everything. Well, it is a man's world, as they say. The male in every species tends to dominate. There are exceptions. But, the exceptions, in a sense, do prove the rule. Actually, the original version of that saying means the exception tests the rule. But anyway, the exceptions exemplify the rule that one sex or the other is going to predominate, in general. But we can modify that, and we should. And the West has, to a great extent. Now, there's always more to be done and negotiated. That's fine. Notice the word change. Clinton came in saying he was for change. And even Republicans do this now. We're for change. What does that mean? How about stability? How about tradition? Change what? Change on what principle? How much? The idiocy of it. And yet it presupposes there's something radically wrong with the way society is already organized. So we're even going to change marriage, are we? Why not restore marriage instead of changing it even more? Maybe that would be the proper form of reform. In fact, as G.K. Chesterton says, it is futile to discuss reform without discussing form. You reform something by restoring its original form. That's what you do. You don't just make it more and more different from itself. You see this alienist spirit all through modern culture. Look at modern art, if you can bear to. The word skill has disappeared from art criticism. An artist with manifest skill now is looked down on, accused of just copying the world. How a terrible thing to do. Anyway, sir.
Good afternoon. You've certainly made it clear that you opposed and thought that the federal government had overstepped its bounds in trying to prevent the Confederacy from seceding from the Union. If I recall correctly, perhaps you can help me with the facts, that Barry Goldwater was pretty much a lone voice on principle in opposing a federal civil rights push.
Right.
At what point, and I don't mean to make this a loaded question, but at what point is it more important for a Christian principle to have precedence over a conservative principle?
Well, I think conservative and Christian principles generally harmonize. I know that in my own thinking, I try to make conservatism the application of Christian principles to the real world. I think there are some kinds of conservatism that become ideologies and therefore come into conflict with Christianity. Especially, I think, in the military sphere. Conservatives have been too quick to approve of warfare in the name of patriotism. And this is wrong. I mean, I think we were wrong to get into both world wars, and we should have stayed out of Korea and Vietnam as well. I don't say this in an anti-American spirit. I think America lost something of itself by getting involved in all these foreign wars. I should mention the Spanish-American War and a number of other interventions too. I hope they go without saying. I mean, the phrase common defense has been as badly abused as the phrase general welfare. Now, both of these have become rubber phrases to justify anything.